wow, all this stuff that my lawyer self still at some level thinks is crazy woo-woo weirdo stuff is like been around for thousands of years all over the world, helping people solve problems. And so that was another level of like, Mellissa, like quit dissing or judging or hiding your quote unquote shamanic wisdom. It's just, I just get frustrated we don't have more words for what that kind of wisdom is, because it doesn't belong to any one culture. It's ubiquitous. It's intrinsic. You know, we shouldn't be stealing or appropriating other people's cultures. And at the same time, we're having these awakenings where we're like, whoa.
That was Mellissa Seaman, and this is episode 51.
Welcome to the Brave Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Lynn, founder of Sistership Circle and author of Open Your Heart and The Art of Leading Circle. I'm the mother of 2 girls, an 8 on the Enneagram, aka the Challenger, happily married to my business partner, Brent, love connecting with nature, and have put in well over 10,000 hours circling with other women. On this podcast, we will explore how to embody the brave woman so that you can take action on your dreams and desires, unapologetically speak your truth, and live life on your own terms. Grab a seat and a cup of tea, and let's get started. I am so excited to have Mellissa Seaman here with me. We go way, way, way back, so far back, and I just love that we get to reconnect on this podcast. It's actually been a few years since we saw each other in Africa. We went on a safari, a walk-in safari into the bush in 2019. So, yay, Mellissa. Thanks for being here with me to talk about being brave.
Yay! Let's do it. Let's walk into the lion's den.
Oh my God, that
baby,
was such a powerful initiation. I'm just curious, like how that's when we walked into the bush, hearing the lions, having to do. At night we take turns as watch guard to make sure we didn't get eaten. How has that impacted you?
Seriously. I mean, that was a really potent wake-up call for me on a couple of levels. One was just like, oh yeah, like nature's where it's at. And if I'm not paying attention to nature, I'm really missing out on the best stuff. That's one thing. And that trip happened at the same time as I had just moved from San Diego on the beach, metro area, Pacific Beach, to my 20 acres of forest in Nevada City in the Sierra foothills. So, into the forest, like I'd really just re-entered living close to nature. And it was amazing to be with you and with these other powerful leader women. Thank you to Saida for inviting us, and to be so immersed in nature that we weren't sure if like a baboon would come and throw its poop at us, or we weren't sure if like, we're listening to the lions get it on all night. Like, it was intense, man. I was like, wow, this is such a potent message for me to get back into nature and to rewild myself as a woman, as a leader, and to remember that a lot of the internet business stuff that we were doing already, is just a tool to get us women back in our primal natural potency. So it was a big wake up call to me, and a big validation too of like, good that you're moving on to land. Yeah, there's lions on your land too. That, whew, wow, potent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting even looking at your evolution from lawyer to shaman to then helping activate people's soul gifts. And I'm just curious too, how this really supported your work and the going even deeper into the embodiment of the soul gifts and being on the land and being in nature.
Yeah, it really reminded me the span that I'm here to help bridge.
Yes.
You know, you and I both have a professional background, like professional kind of corporate-y background. And I was a lawyer. I was a Stanford graduate. Like I was always super analytical. My masculine was really strong. But what I'm really here for and what the true value of what I have is this potent feminine leadership that's embodied in our soul's gifts. Like I truly believe that we are here as souls with unique gifts to do a thing in this lifetime. And whatever our souls came here to do, that's really what's going to bring us happiness and abundance and fulfillment. And like, so it was clear, like, oh man, yeah, it's cool that I can help people make money. It's cool that I can help them find the right words for their business. It's cool that all that stuff is also important, but those are just tools for helping women, myself included, to do what our souls came here to do. And I'm just also remembering those Zulu guides on the trip. You know, those guys were so sweet. And that one day when I was flicking a turkey vulture feather around the head of one of our sisters because she had a migraine, right? Was that you? No, that wasn't you. I think that was Arlie. That was you.
That was me on day 2. Yeah, I was, and that's when I had my like insight around the land and like totally cracked as you and Saida and whoever else was like doing the witchy.
We did flip around you. I think we did it to Arlie, but like, yeah. So I was flipping the turkey feather, and I remember those guys, the guides, the Zulu guides, these two really like amazing, grounded, so like heartbeat of the land guys. And they were like looking over as I was flicking this feather, and I thought, because I'd previously had a friend who was actually from Nigeria. It's a totally different part of the world and the country, but an African dude who had been scared of me because he saw me doing something shamanic like that. And from his own background and history, that was like danger. She's a witch, you know? And I thought, well, geez, I'm sitting here like kind of out in my witchiness right now. I hope this is okay. I hope this is kosher with these dudes, you know, and whatever their beliefs are. And afterwards they came up to me after dinner and they were like, what were you doing with that feather? And I was like, I was clearing her energy and trying to help. And they're like, oh, I told you. They're like looking at each other. I told you. Oh, my auntie does that. Yeah, my granny does that. Oh, do you know what the turkey vulture is? And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, in my adopted Tilshtayan indigenous Apache family, turkey vulture is the prophecy bird. They're like, no way, it's the prophecy bird here too. Oh my God, it's all about the prophecy. I'm like, no flipping way. So South African indigenous tradition, prophecy bird, turkey vulture, all the way to, I mean, Maria's culture is like northern Mexico into Arizona, prophecy bird. And it was just such a wake-up call to me of like, wow, all this stuff that my lawyer self still at some level thinks is crazy woo-woo weirdo stuff is like been around for thousands of years all over the world, helping people solve problems. And so that was another level of like, Mellissa, like quit dissing or judging or hiding your quote unquote shamanic wisdom. It's just, I just get frustrated we don't have more words for what that kind of wisdom is, because it doesn't belong to any one culture. It's ubiquitous. It's intrinsic. You know, we shouldn't be stealing or appropriating other people's cultures. And at the same time, we're having these awakenings where we're like, whoa, you know, you were mentioning earlier that your like cat brought in a boa constrictor. It's like, okay, well, boa constrictor has a certain energy and we can all like, oh, that's interesting. So the feral, like playful kitty cat part of me is bringing in this sensual, divine, feminine, earth connected part of me into the house. What does that mean? Like, duh, that's not cultural appropriation. That's your own intrinsic earth connected wisdom that we've been so separated from, that now we're like really hesitant and scared of using it. And so that's so much of my work. And now your work too. I mean, you're like doing land-based stuff. So guess what? Like, yeah. Whew.
So I really want to go into the soul gifts, but first, can we just pause and talk a little bit on this cultural appropriation? Because you just mentioned something really powerful. You have your indigenous mama who's been training you for a decade at least, right? And now here what we're saying is that
20 years
how
now.
similar these two different indigenous culture beliefs are. So I would just love for you to talk a little bit more, because this is such a hot topic, especially when it comes to circles. And so many people are afraid, being politically correct. And how do I navigate this world of not, misappropriating? And so, what would be your advice for circle leaders in this conversation?
Well, I'll give the advice that my indigenous mama gives me, which is, first of all, if you're being trained in an indigenous tradition by an indigenous person, ask them what proper protocol is. That's like, duh, right? And then believe them. Secondly, if something's arising inside of you that's like, I don't know, we grew this sage in our garden to use for smudge. There's a certain feeling, because this sage was grown in the garden. There's a certain feeling of connection that I have when I then like light it up and utilize the smoke, for my prayers. But if I were to go on Amazon and buy a sage bundle that was created by somebody else, probably harvested from somebody else's land, like maybe harvested from wild lands where maybe it was done with good intent, maybe it was just mown down and then packaged for sale, just know there's a different energy there. Just track that for yourself. Look, we're intuitive women. So be intuitive with how you're sourcing what you're doing. Maybe you went to a sweat lodge once and you learned, a Lakota word, a Lakota Sioux word, because sweat lodge has been really shared widely from the Lakota Sioux Nation. Okay, well, do you have connection with the Lakota Sioux language, or are you just repeating something you heard another, non-connected person say? Then it feels kind of yucky, doesn't it? It feels kind of like playing pretend. Or check into your own heritage too. Like, I have Celtic heritage, I have Swedish heritage, I have West African heritage, and all of those heritages had their own version of a sweat lodge. Well, maybe check it out. If you can find out, you might want to use something from those traditions that is in your blood, not because like, naughty girl, don't use other things, but like, no, find the connection, find the intuitive connection, find what feels really true. And when in doubt, if you're using something from some other tradition, ask somebody of that tradition, hey, is it cool that I'm using this prayer that really is from your people? I know that my Tilshtayen family, we sing songs from the Navajo. We sing songs from the Inuit people. We sing songs because they were gifted. They were shared openly. So there are a lot of indigenously sourced things that are now being shared more openly, but it's worth checking it out. Not because bad girl, don't do it, but because, whoa, isn't that rad? Like, I was given this to share. Likewise, feel free to, I'm like looking around for my stuff here. I've got my little thingies. I've like got this little onyx pyramid. Well, this reminds me of my trip to Egypt. This stone also reminds me of clearing. And so that's what I use it for. Do I need somebody else's permission to use a rock as an imaginary friend? No, I don't. Here's like another cool rock. This is tiger's eye. Some crystal expert person could probably tell me what tiger's eye is for. I don't care. I just like it. I just like it. So, stay conscious about these things. And I think that as long as we do stay conscious and we cite where the source is of the wisdom, it's the same. Tanya Lynn, like you've trained tens of thousands of women at this point. And I've heard women say, yeah, I'm a sistership circle leader. I was trained by Tanya Lynn, and citing your teachers and kind of celebrating the sources of where you've learned things is just good energy. It's good protocol. It's not a naughty girl, bad girl thing. It's hey, let's celebrate where things come from and let's honor that. And I think any of us white chicks who have visions of Native people, coming through us intuitively, that's not just a calling to pretend like we're Native or to imagine, well, then I must be past life Native or something. It's a calling to reach out to your local nation, the people who lived on the land where you were born, lived on the land where you live, lived on the land of your heritage. Reach out if you can and they say thank you, because what you're feeling come through you is of a people who are still hopefully amongst you and who still have connection and knowledge about the land where you're living. It's fun. It can be joyful instead of this white guilt thing, which really doesn't help anybody. It can be an invitation. Here I live on the land of the Nisenan people, which was long thought to be the land of the Maidu people. And only recently has come to light. No, this is actually the land of the Nisenan. These people are still here. So every month I'm giving of my money, of my energy back to the Nisenan, because it's kind of like paying a little bit of rent. I'm supporting and giving back to my teachers because it's all a celebration and that feels good. It feels right. Don't be afraid to tune into what really feels right.
Thank you for that. Really, really powerful. Let's move into the soul gifts and how the women listening to this podcast can really start to utilize and tap into their soul gifts and bring that into their work.
Yeah, thank you. This is a powerful conversation I love having because, especially as women, the past, couple thousand years, we've been really trained to be what we're not. We've been trained and rewarded and threatened and lots of stuff to be different than what we intrinsically are. And so my soul gift system, there's 5 intrinsic soul gifts that we all have one of these in a really strong way. And when we identify which one we really are, we can finally relax and be what we are and stop trying to be everything else. So that's why I built the soul gift quiz. That's why I built the system. It really people have these giant ahas. So I'll describe the 5 types. And then if you guys are interested, you can take the quiz at soulgiftquiz.com to find out which one am I really, but you might get a good inkling of at least what you've been trained to be when I describe them. So the first one I'm going to mention is yours, Tanya Lynn. That's the transmitter. The transmitter type is the type of soul who even from birth, even as a kid, was here emanating a certain juju, a certain natural, radiant, healing energy. It's an evolutionary energy that you just radiate, and you radiate it wherever you go. And transmitter souls tend to feel their whole lives why do I even have to work for a living? I shouldn't have to, because I'm actually giving my gift all the time, whether I'm working at Starbucks or whether I'm speaking on a stage to 20,000 people, I'm radiating my energy. And really, ideally, back in the olden days, you would have been identified early in life as a transmitter, as someone who has this special energy. You would have been brought into the temple early. You would have been protected from having to work too hard. You would have been given whatever body work and food and special care you needed to keep your transmission really pure. And then because the whole community would have known back then that keeping your transmission pure benefits everybody. So it's a really special soul gift, and it's one of the most misunderstood, misidentified, types of person in our current modern culture, because it doesn't fit in modern culture. It needs to start fitting real fast, but it's right now. Okay, so that's a transmitter type. Sensitive, empathic, deeply gifted, very, very sensitive, way more sensitive than you let on. And I know you're like a super go-getter. You've always got a billion irons in the fire. And yet some people who are close to you also know that you are a deeply sensitive, deeply empathic, porous person. And that's true of many of our transmitter sisters. Like, whew. And I've got a transmitter secondary gift, so I have some of that myself. But next I'll talk about the type that I am primarily. Yes, please.
Yeah, so I've always been super sensitive and always thinking that it's too much, right? And I think this is a common thing for women who might be transmitters is cry too much, or you're told how too sensitive you are. And I think one of the biggest things, because I am a generator in human design, but I'm completely open. Like I only have like two channels that are filled. And so the biggest piece here has been learning how to not just blow out. Like my system can so easily get blown out. And just being really mindful of like the smaller doses of things, and not my husband is so extreme with everything. And it's like, no, like that's your deal. You do the extreme stuff. I am right over here, like in the very, like, how do I contain this? And there was a point when I really had to get this down, because I was experiencing so much burnout, adrenal burnout, exhaustion. I mean, it was so bad, and I really had to work on the containment to stop blowing my system out. Yeah. So I just wanted to speak into that piece, because I think a lot of women.
Thank you for sharing that. And that is a common, like, something I see a lot with my clients that, and I have a whole business school online that's designed for transmitters, because transmitters can't do business as usual. Transmitters need very crafty, efficient systems so they don't blow themselves out. And it's imperative. And it's hard also for transmitters to put their gift into words, because it is an ineffable, mysterious, potent, palpable, but hard to describe and strategize energy. And it's different for every transmitter. So I just want to affirm that it's tricky for transmitters to do business and to be really efficient go-getters. It's like, there's a danger of really blowing out. And if you can just imagine like a really delicate copper, thin wired transmission tower, that's like this exquisite, refined instrument. It's not meant for like heavy winds and like big storms. And if it gets struck by lightning, it will melt into a little puddle. And it can take a transmitter years to build their health back after getting blown out in that way. And so finding really stable structures, especially if you own your own business, and many transmitters do own their own businesses, because they're not really designed to work inside of these hamster wheel systems that we've created in this culture. And my heart really goes out to all the transmitters, because y'all sort of you have this big finger coming at you that's like, oh, you're such a diva, you don't want to work for a living, you're lazy. And you're like, no, actually, I need more rest. And if you give me more rest, I will work miracles, but I need more rest. And I do need special care. because this body is a very sensitive instrument. Now, when it's on, whoo, I can work miracles. But as soon as it's tweaked, nope. Like your transmission when you're on is brilliant and serves everyone around you, like everyone on the planet, I believe. But when you're tweaked, your transmission gets tweaked, and then you piss off everyone on the planet. Like people have very, very big reactions to transmitters when transmitters are exhausted, overworked, fried. People project horrible things on transmitters, like, oh, you're bad, you're evil, you're mean. You're like, wow, no, I'm just tired. I'm tired. I'm a little grumpy, but wow, people project a lot onto our transmitters. And I think it's important that we're spending extra time talking about transmitters, because a lot of the women who lead women's circles are transmitters, and holding space for a circle is their kind of the excuse then people have to sit in their presence and receive healing. They don't have to be talking the whole time. They can be quote unquote facilitating. Other people are doing all the talking, but everybody in that circle is still soaking up the juju. I mean, I think about you and other women in our circle who lead circles, and they're transmitters, and women are like, wow, I just sat there in the circle and shared my name and my intention, and then I walked away feeling healed. It's like, gee, I wonder why. And I remember when you were first starting leading sistership circles, and you were like, can I really charge money for this? Like, is it okay? And I was like, wah, and I know that was just one part of you, because the other part of you knows that you have to charge good money, and you're a proponent of that now. But I was like, dude, the benefit that people receive from sitting in circle with a transmitter is so huge. Yes, they do need to pay for it. They need to, or else it's like bad karma. It's bad karma for them to sit there and soak up the juju from this transmitter facilitator and not be in exchange for that. It's like spitting in the face of God. You just don't do that, So thank you for allowing me that rant about transmitter. Here. Okay. And I suspect that your secondary is probably messenger. My primary is messenger. Messenger souls like me are here to put words to wisdom. So wisdom flows through us, and we do our best to translate it. So we're wordsmiths, we're speakers, we're teachers, and many of your circle facilitators also are. They're the ones who really are like making sense of things, doing some teaching as part of the circle. Now, here's a little ninja thing, like you're a transmitter first, and I think a messenger second, which makes you an oracle in my system, which means that you sit in circle and your energy comes through your words, but it's not the words themselves that matter as much as the energy that's pulsing through your words. I'm messenger first, then transmitter. That makes me a prophet type in my system. That means that my energy is carried on the words themselves. If you can hear my words and grok my words, you're getting my energy. So it's like a subtle difference. And this speaks to like the primary and secondary soul gifts, which are things that people learn when they take my little genius revealer is like, it's under $50. It's like, but you learn all this stuff about yourself. So, okay. So that's messengers. Messengers as kids are the ones like standing on the coffee table, like, everyone, I need to make an announcement. I have something to say, like we're always, and we hate to be interrupted. It freaks us out. So you probably have somebody in your life who's like that. And then there's the creators. Now, not creatives. We're all creative. Creators, creators. These are the people who kind of are know-it-alls because they genuinely know it all. These are souls who apparently were here when the earth was created. And even as little kids, they kind of walk around like, yeah, I know. Oh, yeah, no, I know how that works. And they just intrinsically know how stuff works. They understand systems. They understand money. They understand hierarchies. All these different complex systems, they're natural critics. So whereas people, when they point their fingers at a transmitter, are like, oh, you're such a diva, why do you need so much resource? And they point at the messengers and are like, why are you always talking? Why can't you just shut up and listen, And then they point to the creators and say, oh my God, you're such a know-it-all. Why are you always critiquing everything? And the creator's like, that's my gift. That's what I do. That's what I do better than anyone. So listen to the critique of your creators. They actually know. 85% of the time, they're right. It's very frustrating if you have one as a partner. They're always right.
It is my partner. This is 100%.
I was thinking about Brett and my partner too. Total creator. Just knows stuff. And you're like, how did you know that?
Yeah. Totally.
I don't know. I was there when the creator created the world. I just know everything. And they actually do. Okay. And then the two other kinds, there's the researcher soul. The researcher is here and they're very clean. They're like, they can see everything as a witness, and they're emotionally not as emotionally crazy as the rest of us. They have their emotions, but they don't get pulled off base by them. So we should really be listening to our researchers these days, because there's so much like fake news and all this hoo-ha, and the researchers are just like clean witnesses. So researcher types tend to love worlds that make sense, like video games, or like they are often involved in research where they're actually looking at facts because they can see them. They can get it. And people look at researchers and they're like, oh, you're cold, you're not emotional enough. And they're like, no, I have my emotions. I'm not run by them like you nutballs. Okay. And then finally, there's the explorer souls. And the explorers are our friends who are constantly pushing the limits of everything. Like they're the ones who are like, oh, I'm going to test the boundaries of my relationship. I'm going to test the boundaries of my work. I'm going to test the boundaries of my physical body. I'm going to test the boundaries. I'm going to travel whenever I feel like it all the time. They show us how we can expand. They model expansion for us. So those are the explorers. So what's interesting is a lot of people who take the soul gift quiz, they're like, oh, I know what I am. And then they take the soul gift quiz and they learn there's something different actually. And some people really end up in tears because they're like, oh, wow, all this time. Like for me, I would have been like, oh, I'm probably a creator, because I went to law school and I was so good with systems and I was trained to critique things. But then I'm like, oh, but really it's about teaching. It's about speaking. It's about channeling. Oh my God, it's true. And then to find out that I have like a transmitter secondary, it's like, you can really feel busted because you're like, man, I am more sensitive than I've ever given myself permission to be. And so identifying your soul gift can really help you see the part of yourself that got smushed, but it's where your power lies. It's where your power lies, and it's the place where business and life and money can be easy if you stay in your zone of genius there.
I love that. So definitely go to the show notes and click on that link to take the quiz after you listen to this, because it's so fascinating to see what you are. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And so couple that with you stepping into your soul gifts, as well as you stepping into the wise woman, and you have your land, and you've been in you're 50 now, right? Yeah,
I'm like 53. I'm going to be 54. I'm going to be 54 this year. And even as I say that, I'm like, how old am I? Because there definitely reaches a point when you're in your 40s sometime and your hormones just start shifting, and then you're like, oh crap, I think everything's about to change. And it's a beautiful, powerful initiation with sometimes some troubling side effects in the body, but it's also the beginning of this, I don't even care how freaking old I am. This suddenly, you begin to give fewer F's about everything. It's really lovely for those of us that have always been like, wow, I really need to do the right things and I need to get it all done and I need to be the perfect person and need to be the prettiest girl in the room and I need to be the best mommy ever and I need to be, as your hormones begin to shift through what I call the menopassage, which starts long before menopause. It can start for most of us sometime in our early 40s. And everything, just like you give fewer and fewer Fs, fewer and fewer, fewer and fewer and fewer, until what's left is your just devotion to what you're really here for. It's a super exciting, positive change. But like I say, it's got some troubling little symptoms. I highly recommend functional medicine to deal with those. And it's got a bunch of cultural hoo-ha about it, about whatever. As we approach 50s and 60s and 70s, it means XYZ, and now we're just little old ladies and we're irrelevant, blah, blah, blah. And the opposite is true. In indigenous cultures, in anybody who's really got their head out of their tuchus, knows that a woman becomes wise and powerful in this passage. Really wise, really powerful, really independent and trustworthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, then it's like, well, let's take women's power away and make them old crotchety ladies who should be,
let's put them on a bunch of drugs and set them in front of a TV. Yeah. Okay.
And take that
where that goes.
Yeah. So there was a key word there.
Or just deny it.
We have women all over the board here at Sistership Circle. And there was a key word that you said, which was devotion. And that's at the bottom of once we're letting go of all the things and getting to that place of devotion. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like this is the key piece to really embodying the wise woman and stepping into the power of this age and all the experience that you've had, and even stepping into elder, right? So talk a little bit about this devotion piece.
Yeah. Devotion. Well, for me, devotion is shorthand for devotion to the highest good. And it's simple and easy for us. Basically, every wisdom tradition, religion, at the very base of all of it is this devotion to what is good, to the highest good. Devotion to the power of love, devotion to what is in the highest good for the earth and all of her children. And when I was in full mommy mode and full wifey mode and full push, go mode, if you'd asked me, I would say I'm completely devoted to the highest good. And yet I was carrying a lot of other devotions to devotion to keeping this marriage good, devotion to being the best mom I could be, devotion to there's a lot of other things, and sometimes it can muddy devotion to the highest good, where if you really get honest, if I could really get honest with myself, I might have said, yeah, devotion for the highest good, as long as I'm incredibly sexy, as long as I'm perceived by other people as incredibly sexy, devotion to the highest good. And it's it's tricky. We have our conditions. We talk about unconditional love, unconditional devotion, but we do have our conditions. And there's something about aging that starts to strip away and make impossible all those ridiculously unreachable, perfectionist bullshit cultural goals that we hold as women. It's well, guess what? You're not going to be the sexiest, whatever that means to culture, woman in the room. Nope. That's not even a thing. There is no sex. What does sexy mean? Does that mean look like Barbie? Does that what does that mean? Does that mean deeply turns on the man who's been devoted to you for 30 years? That sounds even more real. So all of the things that we've been devoted to, devoting our time to, devoting our attention to, devoting our money to, that are kind of bullshit, they all begin to disintegrate more and more as you get older. And you have a choice. You can either scramble and just like, okay, well then it's Botox. Well then it's okay. Well then it's surgery. Well then it's okay. Well then it's like expensive hormonal replace my stem cells. Like, I'm just going to fight this thing. I'm not going to, I'm not going to give up what I'm devoted to, which is to be the sexiest woman in the room, or to look like a certain ideal, or to, live pain free. Some things begin to be impossible, and you receive the blessings of the death initiation long before you die, as things begins to get stripped away from you, as your parents are taken from you into the other world, as friends get sick and die, and you're like, crap, maybe this stuff that I thought was so important isn't so important, because my bestie just died of cancer, and like, I still have a body that's pain-free. Maybe that's more important than all these other devotions I've held. Even as a priestess or as a leader, a feminine leader, I've been like, I'm devoted to the highest good. It's like, okay, I am. But what I'm noticing is the passage of time, the Menno passage, as a feminine leader, it's like, my guides say this thing, they're like, ante up, Mellissa. Every so often they're like, ante up, when you're playing poker and you have to throw your chips in, it's like, are you in? Are you in? Are you still invested? And so our devotion also needs to be ante up, ante up, ante up, ante up. What are you devoted to now? I almost said bitch. Like, what are you devoted to now, bitch? Like, that spirit talks to me like that. Come on now. Like, the ante up. And so devotion is no longer like this sort of soft fantasy, like, oh, let's just dance in our silks and feel our devotion, and and imagine ourselves as perfect as we feel like we need to be, but underneath feel really scared and like, do I look good enough, and am I doing good enough, and am I a good mommy? And it all becomes more integrated. It's like, I keep looking death in the face and having to make this choice. Like, what am I devoted to? I'm devoted to the highest good. What if that means that I'm the next one to get cancer? And that's in the highest good. Okay, then that's what the highest good is, apparently. Then that's what I'm devoted to. And what if, people that you love have to peel away when it's their time, because that's in the highest good? Okay, that is what I'm here for. And as we upgrade and ante up our devotion, the truth and integrity of our devotion, we just, I think, get closer and closer to our spirit teams and to our true spiritual purpose, which is so much bigger than the lines on our faces or the perfection of our bodies and how we feel, or, whatever. Like, it just gets more and more ante up devotion. What do you mean? What? Oh yeah. Show me with your money. Show me with your actions. Ante up. And so devotions, when you're young and sort of innocent, you're like, oh, devotion, like, I'm just going to sit and sing. And then as you get older, you're like, oh, devotion, like, oh, my brother needs a surgery and I'm paying for it, like that. Devotion gets more and more real, and we get more and more real. That's our path, I think, as spirit women, is both to get more and more connected with spirit and to get more and more real.
That's what it means to be a brave woman. So I'll just, we'll close up. Like closing up with, what's your message for the brave women who are listening today? Just the calling from the mountaintop. We're calling from your coffee table, Mellissa. Yeah.
Wow, I have a renouncement. That's what my son used to say.
Final announcement.
I have an announcement, everyone. The message I want to leave you with, brave woman, is this is the time you came for. This is precisely exactly the time you came for. There's no mistake that you're here now, doing what you're doing right now. So your job is to stay in your lane. Your job is to remember what your soul's gift is and to keep devoting yourself there. Because you have this devotion to the highest good, but what's yours to do? Just this. Do this. This is what you came for. And when you stay in your lane, bring your soul's gift to the world as you're called in your own imperfect way, that's when you'll feel that fulfillment, fully filled. And that's when you know that you're doing what your soul came here to do.
Thank you so much, Mellissa. Thank you for your wisdom and devotion today and the soul gifts. So appreciate you.
You just listened to this show. I'd love for you to leave the Brave Woman podcast an honest review. Reviews help podcasts like this one grow, making it more possible for me to devote my time, energy, and money to its production. If you take a screenshot of your review and email it to support@sistershipcircle.com, we'll send you one of our archetype activations as a thank you gift. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Up next, join me for a solo episode where I guide you through a process of building community with depth, authenticity, and integrity.